Ben had been called a lot of things in his life: scrap rat, junk jockey, the human who talked to machines like they could talk back. None of it had ever bothered him. Out here on the fringe of Cetacii space, reputation meant less than a working toolkit and a steady hand. He'd found the dragon 3 days ago, half buried in the red dust of an abandoned mining moon, its enormous chest rising and falling in slow, pained breaths. Not a dragon in the fairy tale sense. A Vraxel, one of the ancient biomechanical leviathans that predated most spacefaring civilizations in this sector. Its scales shimmered with dull, corroded plating, and where its eyes should have been, there were only scorched sockets, sensor clusters burned out by something violent and long past. "You're not going to believe this," Ben had said into his calm, staring up at the creature's ruined face. "Believe what?" Lucy's voice crackled back, sharp with static and irritation. She was still up on the ship, running diagnostics on the shuttle's cracked hull plating. "Ben, we don't have time for strays. We've got 4 hours before that patrol sweep comes back through this system. It's not a stray. It's a Vraxel. And it's blind." There was a pause. "Blind how?" "Sensor arrays are slagged. Looks deliberate. Someone did this to it." Another pause, longer this time. Ben knew that pause. It was the sound of Lucy's mind shifting gears, calculations of risk and time folding into something else entirely. The thing that made her a terrible mercenary and an excellent human being. "Fine," she said, "but we're doing this fast." Fast, as it turned out, was relative. The Vraxel's ocular housings were massive, cathedral-sized things, and whatever weapon had blinded it had cooked the internal wiring down to slag. Ben spent the first hour just clearing out melted circuitry, hands black to the elbow, sweat cutting clean lines through the dust on his face. "You know this thing could kill us both without even trying," Lucy said, crouched beside him with a scanner in hand, its blue light throwing strange shadows across the dragon's stone-still face. "It hasn't yet. That's not the reassurance you think it is." Ben grinned despite himself and kept working. He fed a salvaged conduit line from an old mining drone into the base of the housing, spliced it against a cracked photoreceptor array he'd pulled from the derelict shuttle they'd scavenged last month. None of it was Vraxel tech. None of it was supposed to work together. But Ben had never much cared what things were supposed to do. "Human tech isn't rated for biomechanical interfacing," Lucy pointed out, reading off her scanner. "The impedance alone should fry the housing." "Should," Ben agreed, twisting 2 wires together with a satisfying click. "But I rerouted the buffer through the drone's old shock absorbers. It won't fry. It'll just complain a lot." "That's insane." "That's Tuesday." She huffed something that might have been a laugh, might have been despair, and kept feeding him tools as he called for them. A laser cutter, a spool of conductive thread pulled from an emergency suit lining, 3 mismatched capacitors that had no earthly business being compatible with each other. Ben worked with the calm, unhurried focus of a man who had built entire ship engines out of parts other people had thrown away, because sometimes throwing things away was the only mistake people made twice. 2 hours in, the enormous creature shifted. A groan like tectonic plates shifting rumbled up from somewhere deep in its chest, and both of them froze. "Ben, it's fine. It's just waking up a little. Means the neural bridge is taking." "You don't know that." "I don't know anything, Lucy. That's half the fun." She stared at him like she wanted to throw a wrench at his head. He'd take it. Better than watching her stare at a dying dragon with nothing to do. By the 3rd hour, Ben had jury-rigged a full receptor array from parts that belonged to at least 6 different manufacturers across 3 different species. It was, by any sane engineering standard, an abomination. It was also, when he finally sealed the last housing panel and stepped back, humming with a soft, steady blue light. "That's it?" Lucy asked. "That's it. Now we wait and hope I didn't just wire a bomb into its skull." "Ben." "Kidding. Mostly." The Vraxel's chest rose, held, fell, and then, with a sound like grinding continents, its enormous head lifted from the dust for the first time in 3 days, ancient photoreceptors flickering, dim, then bright, then light. Real light, catching detail, resolving shape. The dragon's massive head turned, slow and deliberate, until its rebuilt eyes fixed on the 2 small figures standing in its shadow. Ben held very still. Lucy's hand found his arm. The Vraxel made a sound low in its chest. Not a roar, not a threat, but something closer to a question. Yeah, Ben said quietly, like he was speaking to an old friend rather than something that could swallow their shuttle whole. You can see now? You're welcome. That was when the sky tore open. For shapes dropped out of high orbit in tight formation. Not shuttles, not scouts, but full military cruisers, hulls marked with the insignia of the Tesserine Combine. The same faction that had, if the scorch patterns on the dragon's face were any indication, blinded it in the first place. Ben, Lucy said, voice gone flat and cold in the way it did right before things got very bad. Tell me you have a plan. I have a dragon. That is not a plan. The cruisers descended fast, weapons arrays already tracking, targeting locks blooming red across Ben's wrist display. A voice crackled over open comm, harsh and mechanical. Unauthorized salvage operation. The asset belongs to the Combine. Stand aside. Ben looked up at the Vraxel. The Vraxel looked down at him. Really looked, for the first time in 3 days, with eyes built from human scrap and stubborn refusal to give up on something broken. Your call, big guy, Ben said. But I figure you've got some things to say to them. The dragon's answer came not in words, but in the way its enormous wings unfurled, catching the pale system light, and the way its newly restored eyes turned, slow and deliberate, toward the 4 cruisers descending like they owned the sky. It hadn't forgotten who took its sight. It hadn't forgotten anything at all. Lucy grabbed Ben's arm and hauled him backward as the Vraxel rose to its full height, dust and rock cascading off its ancient plating, and let out a roar that cracked the stone beneath their feet. The lead cruiser's targeting lock flickered, hesitated, and in that half-second of hesitation, Ben allowed himself a small, exhausted smile. Scrap parts, he murmured, more to himself than to Lucy, watching the dragon surge upward to meet its enemies head-on. Never underestimate what you can build from what everyone else throws away. Lucy didn't answer. She was already running for the shuttle, dragging him with her, laughing despite herself. The particular laugh of someone who had long ago stopped being surprised by the things Ben Harding could fix and started simply being grateful she got to watch him do it. Above them, the sky lit up with fire and fury, for cruisers scrambling against a fifth party they had never planned for. A dragon with human eyes. And a very, very good reason to be angry.